This week we received the troubling update on the county's Thrive 2050 general plan. Thrive 2050 is the county's master planning document that's intended to guide all of our master plans moving forward over the next 3 decades. While it doesn't directly do the zoning itself, it was originally part of a joint proposal that included a zoning section that the council removed before moving this piece of the plan forward. So you're not seeing the planned zoning that was intended to accompany the document at the same time. This document is a very big deal to the future of this county because it lays out a framework for future zoning. It will influence our decisions over budget expenditures and our calculation, billions of dollars that was dismissed by the council, or at least members of the council, by simply saying they didn't believe it. It affects educational investments, transportation infrastructure, economic development, and protecting our environment, creating more affordable housing, as well as our racial equity and social justice efforts. I'm glad the council decided to commission a racial equity and social justice review of Thrive, because that was not done by the planning board originally. This review was conducted quickly, too quickly, because of the time constraints. It was intended to solidify the plan moving forward, but it's actually done the opposite. We now have more questions than we have answers. This week, I sent a letter to the county council encouraging them to not move forward on Thrive until fundamental issues with the plan and concerns regarding the lack of equity and community involvement are resolved. These are issues I've been raising since Thrive first surfaced. I've tweeted out a link to the letter, which I've pinned at the top of my Twitter profile. It's also on my Facebook page. I encourage everyone to watch a presentation of that review given to the county council earlier this week if you haven't already. Here are some of what the reviewers said. Generally, we found a lukewarm reaction to Thrive's policies among our target demographic. While we received some positive feedback, many people expressed frustration due to a perceived lack of context, sensitivity, and approach that did not go far enough to consider and prioritize the needs of the working class communities. Some folks expressed skepticism around the successful plan implementation and felt that adverse unintended consequences were likely in their communities if certain safeguards were not reinforced in the methodology. Additionally, there were many who felt that the prior community engagement efforts were not adequate and that the plan did not reflect a truly participatory process. The 3 main issues were identified being the primary problems with Thrive 2050 outreach: a lack of demographic data gathering, lack of racial representation in early phases of engagement, and lack of transparency and clarity about the stakeholder and community outreach process. In general, the report said, for all planned chapters, the how we will evaluate progress sections need to include establishing specific targets for equity outcomes. For example, establish criteria to support Black-owned businesses' recruitment and retention. After revising Thrive, note that they're saying Thrive needs to be revised, revisit with low-income and BIPOC communities to make sure communities can support the policies before passing the document. Allow more time and resources to complete drafting a racial equity and social justice review. Conduct a housing study that will seek to address displacement fears by the community, determine how to achieve growth targets, and identify barriers to successful implementation. Establish working relationships with communities that prioritize participatory planning and delegate power to vulnerable communities. The feedback gathered by the team and the significant changes they recommend is why I have urged the council to disapprove Thrive 2050 plan as it's written. The council does not have time to revise Thrive before the statutory deadline, which is October 25th. It simply cannot be done in that time. The previous housing element, which is only 10 years old, had more concrete solutions for affordable housing than this document has. Thrive 2050 doesn't even come close to what the other document provided for affordable housing. There's no plan or location where affordable housing is to go, no concrete policies to achieve housing goals other than asserting that if more multifamily housing were built in single-family neighborhoods, the supply of housing would increase and drive down the price of housing. This contradicts a different park and planning study that looked at that model and concluded that new housing would be the same or more expensive than the units they replace. You could have also asked any real estate agent who would have told you that new housing would be built to meet the market point in any given neighborhood. There's absolutely no urgency to pushing this plan forward. It's been presented as a solution for affordable housing, but the county already has more than 30,000 units in the pipeline that have been approved. So it's not like Thrive 2050 is necessary to find places to build housing. The challenge is getting developers to build what they've already been approved to build. The place and number of units have been identified, in some cases for a very long time. The problem we face is why it has not been built. More on that at a later date. We need to get this done right. We still want to give our community the best roadmap moving forward. It just may take more time to draw up that map.